Welcome everybody into our final coffee chat for the month of November. And today we're going to be starting to have a discussion all around our relationship with ourselves. So before we get started, I want to invite all of you to just notice whatever sensations are going on inside your body right now. I'm noticing a little flutter in my own heart that just came up just now. And I want you to just allow yourself to focus on your breath for a moment. Find some rhythm to it. Find some harmony with it. In and out. Allow it to seek out any sensations that might be coming up in the body. And almost like it's coming to give it some nice little warm hugs. And then just finding that rhythm with your inhale and your exhale. Right down the center channel of your spine. As it comes in, bathing over your pineal gland, down your throat, into your heart, your lungs. And if you can, allow that breath, envision it coming down into your solar plexus, just below your rib cage, where your adrenals and your kidneys are. And then see if you can allow that breath to come even deeper down into your stomach, your large and small intestine, your colon, down into your creative space. Maybe you have a uterus, maybe you don't. Maybe you have testicles, maybe you don't. Just that creative space within you, all the way down to your perineum. Letting that breath come deeply down within your body. And knowing that the air coming into your lungs is meeting one of those core needs, the need for breath, the need for safety, allowing that flow of expansion and contraction within your body, allowing some ease and flow with each breath. The heart is beating. And in this moment, if you open your eyes and gently look around, you can orient yourself into a safe space. You know that all of your needs are met. You have air to breathe. Your heart is beating. And in this moment, you are surrounded by love. And let's all take one of those delicious breaths together. Breathing in and breathing out. Thank you.
You. On a great start.
Erin, do you have questions for us?
Oh. Need to turn down my heat in my house. It feels like. Oh goodness.
I feel like I'm on the polar opposite. I'm over here in my sweatshirt and I've got a blanket and my hot tea. And you're like tank
70.
top and 70
Yeah.
and sunny.
It was a little chilly on our walk this morning. It was about 50. I wore a sweatshirt over my shorts, but I probably could have worn some pants. But yeah, sunny and I don't know what it is outside. Sunny and 69.
I'm gonna
Um,
just soak that in through the screen.
Which should feel like a heat wave after being here.
yeah,
Mm.
so cold. Well, not so cold visiting Tanya, but not as sunny.
Mhm.
Man, there's so many things. I went to Tanya's last week. As I put in our Marco Polos in our group, I think Christy, you were watching, noticing, at least for me, when I travel, there is a separation. When I travel alone, there is a separation between me and my family. And I get into sometimes a different element, and then I get reintroduced back into my family element.
Mhm.
And noticing, as I said in the Marco Polos, like I have been a person who has, my habit energy has been anger and frustration. I have always met fight with fight. I think that's the part of the power. Brenda, I'd be so curious for you to share after I'm done sharing my snippet, like if that's kind of where your habit energy has been. And noticing with my child how she's very similar to my mother. I think it's like perfect practice for me to kind of work through some of the things that I might have experienced during childhood that maybe didn't get expressed and things of that sort. But so she made some comments and I could notice myself, not all the way, like not completely like we talked about last week, like flipping the lid. It didn't, it just was like, boop. It's like, oh, I see you. I see what's happening here. And I noticed it come up in my chest. I noticed how I wanted to respond was like, fine, just go in your room, you know, versus, okay, you know, and just bringing it back to me, like, how do I want to feel in this instance? And also realizing what I realized last week at Tanya's is like, I don't have to it's like we don't have to have wars to end war, right? Like there actually can be love. And I always kind of from the outside, like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying, but like, okay, I get it now. Like at my being level, like, okay, she can be totally upset with me and I can still feel peace and calmness in my body. I don't want to say it was perfect, right? Like I felt it a little bit, but just noticing. And then, you know, I went and talked to her and you could still feel that tension that she was projecting or whatever. And me wanting, like, how, just bringing it back to myself, like, how do I want to feel in this moment? And then Jason and I had gone, we eaten lunch at the island and she was like, you know, I'm still mad at you, right? And just noticing like where she might want to poke. And I would have probably before just, let's go to bat, you know? And then just bringing it back to myself of like, okay, no, I want to feel I am safe, right? Like her saying that doesn't mean anything about my safety. I think before, because I always felt like I have to like defend myself. I have to, you know, say what I need to say. And I was like, I'm not going there. Kind of like what Abraham talks about of like coming off of the disc, you know, it's like, no, I'm going to stay up here and she can either meet me at my vibration up here or she doesn't, whichever is okay. But yeah, just, and then afterwards, right before this call, I was like feeling the need to meditate and then the tears just, you know. And Tanya and I talked about this while I was there. It's like having had this armor for myself for so long, like the tender parts of me. Like that's the only way I knew how to protect that part.
Mm-hmm.
And so letting those come down, but that's extremely vulnerable, right? and feeling like, well, if they see me, or kind of like, if I let you see all my hands of cards, then you're going to use that against me. So just allowing it to crumble, and also just like, it was so funny because Sarah Blondin was the meditation that I listened to. You are not your habit energy. And then towards the end, like the last 10 minutes, she just was like, and I love you, and I love you, and I love you. And it's just like, that's such softness, I think, that I haven't ever really had for myself, which has been, you know, we talked about self-compassion before, which has been a work in progress for me, and also compassion for Grayson too. So I'm curious, Brenda, like, do you feel like fight with fight?
In my head,
Yeah.
right? My history is slightly different in that I want to come fight to fight, but I shove it down because it's not safe to express it, or hasn't been safe to express it. So it's always been, it flips the lid, absolutely, you know, and want to fight, but not the option to fight. So it's just shoved down and festered, and I'm still learning safe ways to release it, because I don't want to explode. I don't want to push myself to the point of exploding. I want to be able to release it in the moment, but release it safely. Understanding that how others might react to that is not the problem, but I also don't want to incite conflict in my relationships either, right? Because I'm very anti-conflict because of all that shoving down. But yeah, I definitely want, it rears up, and I definitely want to fight. Absolutely.
How do you think that that has shaped the relationship that you have with yourself?
To be totally honest, I don't know who I am. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. I came onto this almost wanting to say before we started, I'm having an identity crisis today. I don't know who I am if I'm not doing. And I've spent, I'm not trying to tangent, but I've spent the last 4 days just trying to be. I mean, doing the cooking and cleaning and things that are normal part of life, but not doing anything I didn't want to do. Not feeling obligated to accept invitations that didn't feel good. I mean, just trying to be. And number one, I felt bored out of my mind. And I binge watched Lifetime Hallmark movies, which didn't feel very satisfying at all, to be honest. And, you know, I'm still trying to figure out who I am that can just be. And I don't know who that is. And it's very, very frustrating, because I feel like at my age, I should know. And I don't. I really don't feel like I do. And so that's an ongoing process for me, is because I've stuffed it down for so long, that is who I became, but that is not who I am. And trying to figure out where that falls has been an ongoing challenge for me.
Brenda, I want to bring something to your attention. Look what's on my desk. I'm like,
Yes.
that is no surprise, right? I'm like,
Right.
just wondering how, you know, when we created that visual for ourselves, we were in such a beautiful space of connection
Mhm.
and not distraction, right? We weren't in our own home where we had laundry and cooking and things to do, and we weren't around our family that divided our attention. It was really just, it was like our own little personal retreat.
Yes.
I know that we did have a little bit of other things that were distracting us, but I'm wondering if something like that could be like your blank canvas that you come back to every now and then, and just like,
I stare at mine. It sits on my desk.
okay. Yeah. I'm like, I find myself doing that as well. I'm like taking my own advice like that. I love that we created that, because there are some things that I'm like, oh, I wonder what I meant by that word. But Yeah, it's like your love notes from your highest self to remind you who you are.
You know what I heard, Brenda, without you saying it, is I heard I'm really good at having relationships with everyone else, being taught how to be and do with everyone else, but I don't, like, no one teaches us how to be. Like, it's this constant molding and shaping, I think, through parental, right? Through our parents, through, just when I say parents, family, right? Whatever that
Mhm.
is, through societal, through friends, through spouses, whatever it is, how we are supposed to be.
How we think they expect us to be.
Mhm.
But when,
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, I tell people all the time, and I'm trying to make that a different story now, but I've told people for a long, long time, I have two different personalities. I have my work personality and I have my home personality. And my work personality really is more in line with who I think I am, because it is more the meet the fight with fight, stand up for myself, fight for what's right, that kind of thing. But then when I get home, it's the stuff it down, keep the peace. Not that there's anything in specific that flares up, but with my home friend relationships, it's a very different, it's not as, word that comes to mind is aggressive. It's more of a submissive relationship with others. And I get buried. I know I get buried. Like, I accept invitations for things to be with people I really don't want to be with because people expect me to. I'm trying to learn. I'm working on saying no. No is a very, very difficult word for me because I want to be, I want to feel accepted. I want to feel included. And the easiest way I know to do that is to say yes, even if that's not what feels good. So, again, trying to blend the two to figure out who I really should be 24/7, not segregating how I behave.
Brenda, I want to bring up a conversation that you had shared. Do you mind if I bring up the
Yeah.
experience
Go
that you
ahead.
had shared in our Marco Polo about how, like, your instinct was to say no to a social gathering, and you went, and you were really happy that you went because you
Yep.
were able to make connections with some lovely people. And then you also recognized maybe some people that you didn't want to connect with in that moment, at least.
Mhm.
Like, what a beautiful step towards, like, getting out of your comfort zone, but still honoring yourself, right? Like, you didn't have to show up fake.
No.
You were appreciating the people that you wanted to appreciate.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
But that was a challenge for me
of
because
course.
it was something that didn't feel comfortable,
Yeah,
but trying to push the boundaries to discover more of who I am by
yeah.
interacting with others. Yeah.
And it's like sometimes maybe even just testing the waters just to see, like, if you'd say yes and then you get there and you're like, oh, this is a hell no, that you just leave, you know?
Except for that event I was hosting, it wasn't
Oh,
very
that's
easy
right.
to just
Yeah,
leave.
you can't do that. Turn on the smoke alarms. Everybody, we have a fire.
That didn't happen, but that could have, no, it was a lovely experience. But yeah, that's part of it is, not saying no for the sake of no, but challenging even yourself on why you're saying no. Is it a valid, not a valid reason? Is it really what's in your heart? Right? If the no is a no and it's really from your heart, then you should definitely honor it. But if it's just a place of uncomfortable and that's really all you can find for your reason, push your limits.
Yeah.
And we have to think about, okay, why do we do the things we do, right? Like, at our core, we want love, we want connection, we want safety. So we do these things thinking, this is my experience, we do these things thinking it's because if we say no to people, then we might break connection. They might get mad at us. They might say things and we feel unsafe, whatever it might be, right? Like no one makes us feel unsafe, but like we have thoughts around that. And so bringing it back, one of the things is for me is working on is like, how do I generate that within myself, right? How do I generate love? What does actually love feel like in my body? At least for me, probably 38 years of my life, I feel like this is where I've been, right? Like just right here, like a total disconnection from myself, because there was a time when it felt unsafe, right? To feel whatever was being felt. And so like playing around with like, what does love feel like in my body? Where does it show up? Or when I feel connected, and sometimes we almost have to, at least for me, you girls tell me, I've like had to practice it maybe on the outside. Like when I feel connected to my husband, where does that feel in my body? And working on some of those feelings to generate them within ourselves, and not having, because when we feel that way, when we feel safe, no matter what, that's where we can be okay with saying no or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
When like
Because the no doesn't feel safe.
Right. And thinking about the space of people pleasing and how like that's been perceived or is maybe a response to trauma, and when you're making everybody else happy, you're abandoning your own happiness sometimes. I mean, obviously there could be some, I don't
Lots
know,
of times probably.
Yeah.
Right? If we're doing something, if we're ever doing something we don't want to do and we're pleasing someone else, we are for sure abandoning ourselves.
Right. And like coming back to what you were sharing about Grayson, like all you were doing was establishing a boundary pleasantly, politely, and she got angry. And it's like, how often as a parent, I mean, no, I can think 25 times just this past week about me saying no and my children responding in frustration or disappointment. And like this like fire start, like this low grade fire starting to brew, like, oh, I'm disappointing them. I'm doing it wrong. And it's like, no, I'm honoring my boundaries that I feel are very important to me. And it's okay if they're disappointed, right? Like that isn't going anywhere. It's like the best practice to remember, like these are the safe spaces to practice that, like not abandoning yourself.
This is one of those like illuminated moments of Erin, when you were talking about, you were gesturing about being in your head and not in your body. And then like the awareness, we've all been on this journey together for some time before we ever started these conversations. And we've all kind of had that awareness that we have been in a deep state of freeze, of functional freeze. Like we're still functioning throughout life, but we're not connected to our emotions, our bodies whatsoever. We have that complete disconnect. We're just in our logical mind. And at that, we're in that space in our brains that is completely, especially in the beginning, it's all back in the brainstem. It's back in that survival mode because we're in such deep stress. As we start to come back online and we're moving back up into the emotional brain, we start to feel again, we start to experience all of these things. And like you were saying, Brenda, with like, I don't know who I am right now. And I would say that you're just starting to discover who you truly are. You are allowing that old story, those old conditions about this is how we make our way through the world. This is how we survive, we adapt. Like this is all going on behind the scenes. Your subconscious mind, your mind as your body has been like, this is the tape we run when this happens. This is the tape we run when that happens. And you're just starting to explore who you are without those stories, without those safety parameters on. And it's very uncomfortable because there's so much uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty. We have not practiced what it's like to have someone show us their anger and allow it, instead of like we have to meet them with that anger and to be in that space, to allow ourselves to just like, this is the place I am exploring being. Erin, you also said about, you know, we all want love, we want connection, we want safety. The other thing that we want is to be able to be our authentic selves, to be the expression that is our individual genius. Like each one of us is a once in a cosmic lifetime event. Our experiences, our knowledge, our things that we've been through has so many gifts buried deep within those stories of how we've compromised ourselves, how we've pushed our true identity away in order to maintain that what the illusion is of our safety. And it's just so beautiful seeing all of this woven in, Christy, with you, you know, exploring how 25 times in this last week alone, I've noticed I've stated what I need, and I've allowed my children to just feel and express and be okay with that. Brenda, you like, I'm just sitting with the being right now, and it's a little bit boring. And at the same time, it's like, it kind of reminds me of when you're getting ready to dive into a pool, you sort of like, you might stick your toe in a couple of times. What's the water like? Is this going to be like a, I got to get myself ready for that dive, you know? So it's such a beautiful tapestry listening to all of you talk about this. And there's a lot of vulnerability in sharing that. I even had my own somewhat identity shift while Erin was here. We were going through my drawers, and I giggle because the first day was, I was like, okay, I'm looking at the weather this week. It's supposed to be downpouring like the entire week except for Sunday. And I want to be able to tackle our shed that's outside, not while it's pouring down rain. And I have lots of thoughts about doing things on the inside. And so we went up to my bedroom first. And this is going to bring up all the burpees for those of you. Yeah, burping, my body's way of sometimes communicating. It's very physical. I get the burps, I get the coughs, I get the yawns, I get the sneezes. And it's just all the wind moving through my body. And sometimes I get the farts. It's like, yeah, all the winds. We went up to my bedroom first, and I pulled open one drawer. And before I actually even got into the drawer, I had this meltdown, and I was like, I don't know what's happening here. And I'm just going to allow, I told Erin, I'm in unfamiliar territory. I'm in some confusion, some chaos right now. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. And she just held the space for me, gave me a hug. I started crying, like, I'm not sure what's coming up. And I can't remember exactly like where all the things took place, but one of the questions she asked me was, have you gone through these clothes before? When was the last time you went through your clothes? And I was like, this has been such a journey, and I haven't, like, it's never been me right now going through these clothes. And what I started to realize as we were going through the process of opening up one drawer, as I took a stack of clothes out, I was like, oh, I remember these leggings and how I felt when I was in these, and like just realizing the journey I've been on with my physical body and what I've been playing with and creating within myself, which is this: how deeply can I be in love with myself? How deeply can I have unconditional love for this physical state of being? And as I started taking clothes out, it was this realization of all the emotion that was tied, all the stories that were tied to these clothes, and the experiences that I had in them, and who I thought myself to be at that point. And in the past, whenever I'd held on to different clothing, it was like, I want to get back to that person.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was asking myself, is it that person that I really want to get back to? No. That person was trying to be someone for someone else. I want to be like just me. I want to be unconditionally in love with who I am at the core of my being. And so it took us hours. It took me, I think, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours to go through a drawer and a half. And the shed I think we have is a 6x8 maybe. It took us 15 minutes to clean that sucker out, because there was no emotion. There was no story about who I am. So where I ended it with that drawer and a half was realizing I am coming into a state of being completely unconditionally in love with me. And I have no idea what that's going to look like in my body, but I really want to feel good in the process of moving towards that. So all the clothes were just like, if they don't feel good on me right now, they're gone.
You just uncovered like a really important statement, and you all have heard me share my roller coaster of emotions for my body. And like, Tanya, I always feel like you're my beacon, just like a couple of steps ahead of where I want to go in that space of unconditional love. But when you said like, I want to feel good in this body, the story that comes up to me is like when I had positive associations, like the objectification of my body was interpreted to feel good, right? Like when I was a certain size, I got compliments, or I was perceived to be fit by my own judgment or by others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's such an interesting shift, what I'm noticing, like stepping into this space of not objectifying my body and just seeing it for its wholeness and its health and its value, just, breathing. It's really uncomfortable, because it's like, how old am I? 42. It's like 40 years of my life was focused on my body being like a performance or something that served a purpose other than just like being this vessel for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a slippery slope. Like I noticed that I'll be in like a good momentum, and it has a lot to do with like who I'm around and what I'm seeing on in the screen and the conversations that are around me. But it's like I'm reinventing that space of feeling good in my body.
Mhm.
right? Like letting that old story die. Such
Coming
an
back to the
interesting
truth of
interpretation,
it's coming back to the truth of who you are.
right? But I don't, and kind of back to like what Brenda started by saying, like, who in the hell am I? Right? Like, I really recall having this kind of anxiety in second grade. Right? So it's like most of my life has been in this space of belief. It's like thinking that I used to live underwater and now I live on land, or vice versa, right? And what an ironic statement for me to live in the water.
And this could be obviously could and should be a whole nother conversation, but one of the things that I was exploring when Erin was here was my gate or key of 46, and the very physicality of my being and what I have to experience within my body. It talks about coming back to like those experiences that we had when we were in that state of basically just being completely like sponges from the time that we're born until we're 7 years old. I mean, even maybe before birth, because we have that DNA from our parents, circulating throughout us, and then we're born, and the stories, the imprints, the things that we observe that we don't really have language to understand, that's all within our body. And part of this coming back to know ourselves, that intimacy into me, I see, which is, meditation and mindfulness, and always continuing to bring it back into the self, is exploring that definite discomfort of, I don't know who I've been, and trying to find my true authentic self, which is always going to be at the core of who you are. And we may have morphed, compromised ourselves, contorted ourselves to, dimmed our light, turned things down to explore moving through life in a way that we thought was safe. And it's just peeling away those layers of untruths. And like, if I could say anything to anybody listening, some people are afraid of who might be the truth of who I am, but at the core of every single human, I don't care what color you might identify with, what gender you may or may not identify with, what story you have about what religion you came from or what family you came from, at the core of every human being is unconditional love. It's our connection, it's our wholeness. And so if I could gift anyone anything, I would say, don't be afraid. That is in you.
I know that synchronicity is a big thing, right? I always hesitate, right, to share my stories because I think a lot of times I talk too much. So sorry, not sorry. Today, I went to a school with one of my toddlers that I'm working with, and they are doing this extra class, and I think they called it Missing Parts. And I was like, y'all are going to what class? And they were like, Missing Parts. It's something like that. It was something really obscure. And so we walk in, and there is just, and keep in mind, like 8 2-year-olds. Okay. And you walk in, and there's about 6 tables set up, and there's like kinetic sand, and there's little marbles, and there's wood, and there's feathers. I mean, it's just like random stuff. And the the classroom teacher, not the teacher that's teaching missing parts, the classroom teacher that's responsible for these children, comes in and she's like, no, don't put them in your mouth and don't do this and don't do this. And the teacher goes, excuse me, the only rule that we have in here is not to throw. Don't let them put them in their mouth because we don't want them to choke. But like, this is the space where we don't tell them no. This is the space where we just let them be creative. And I said, hold on, come here for a second. What did you just say? And I said, this is like the core of everything that I believe. Like, these children are 2 and they have like this just like vessel of creativity alive in their body. And here comes the adults to just be like, zoop, don't do this. Zoop, don't do this. And then they're like, they become these little robots, you know, like, I'm supposed to make this. And she said, yes, I think we are here to learn from them. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, can you start making a YouTube channel? I don't even know what this missing parts is, but I'm like, what a brilliant space for people. I'm like, I could have stayed in that room for hours and there was nothing to do except just like fidget.
Play.
Yes, just play. And there was no agenda, right? It wasn't like a right or a wrong. There were some children needing to learn how to share some space with each other, rightfully, but it was just so beautiful. And I thought, I mean, just in line with what you're saying, Tanya, right? Like that conditioning that we fall into. And now I feel like what I'm experiencing is like trusting that unconditioning or deconditioning is going to reveal something that's just like a toddler, right? Like this free spirited, just unconditional love source of energy.
Yeah.
I think some of us, I'll speak for myself, have forgotten how to play or never were free to play in the first place, right? You grew up in a regimented structure of any kind. Even if you went to daycare from day one or didn't go to daycare from day one, we've all been boxed and restrained to fit a mold that either made us easier to deal with or made us quiet for others or just restrained, contained. And so coming back to Tanya's comment about 46, which is about coming out to play and enrapturing that playtime and the ecstatic joy of play. I'm thinking to myself right now, it's like, how do you even incorporate that when you don't know what play is, what play feels like? And so thinking about that and thinking about what I can do in and of myself, because it's the fear of looking goofy, being misinterpreted. The world is so serious. And if we're not as serious as everybody else, are we going to be dismissed, which is a loss of connection? And, can you do what feels good in your closet? But how do you let that light shine out, right? Because
how do you come out of the closet?
Right. And just, it's a ridiculous statement, but it's a true feeling. It's like, how do you do that? How do you, and I know we don't focus on the how, but just thinking is like, okay, what could I do after we get off this call? What could I do that constituted play? And if I can figure that out, then I'll figure out what it feels like. But right now, everything is about seriousness and about, what's next on my list or all those things, and how to throw that out the window, even just for a short period of time, to say, be me.
I'm trying to remember which key it is that has the shadow of seriousness. I was just reading this and how that seriousness can then be transformed into delight. And what you said just a minute ago was, I know we don't do the how. We do the how, but we do it in the okay, so I want to figure out how to be more playful. So then we switch up the letters, right? We shuffle them up and it becomes who. Who is Brenda that's playful?
Mm.
Who is Brenda that doesn't give a rat's ass if she looks goofy? Like she's just so full of joy and jubilance and delight that she can just be in that state. Who is that? Like these are the questions that we want to ask ourselves, because at our core, we have those answers. It's part of our authentic being. When we are so full of unconditional love, we can just be that. And we don't have to figure out how to, like, if that's the link in the chain, the missing link for some of us at different aspects or points in time, we just ask ourselves, who is that? So that might be a question to play with in your, like our minds want to keep us busy with those two things, right? It wants to be right because right is certainty, certainty is safe. Wrongness, like being wrong is uncertain, being wrong is not safe. But that's kind of a little bit of what's required for us to start playing. We have to be okay to make mistakes. And I use that with like air quotes. We have to be okay to be, air quotes again, wrong, right? Correct. And then that idea of, you know, the mind is wanting to keep you safe and it's wanting to be right. So when we ask those questions of who, when we say, you know, what would it be like to just allow delight to come into me? Or what would it be like to play? What do I think would be fun? What does fun look like in my life? And it's going to look different to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But when you allow yourself to explore that, who would I be if I was feeling playful? What would that be like in my body? Then your mind, because it wants to be right, is going to start showing you things. Like you'll have an impulse or an inclination to maybe get your glass out, or you might have an impulse or an inclination to put some music on and move your body and play with your body. Or you might have an impulse to go on a walk that you then run into a neighbor that's out walking their dog, right? It can show up in so many different ways. And then you start having this internal like inventory, so to speak, of, well, when I go for walks, I feel good. Like I'm able to start moving my thoughts. Or when I sit and doodle, you know, draw or whatever, I notice this happening, right? It just starts to open up. So when we're asking how, we just need to then take that how do I become more playful? And we convert it to who. Who would I be if I was more playful? What would that feel like?
I think also, I don't know if this is true for you, Brenda, but it's like we have to allow some space. Don't have to, but you know, it seems, at least that's where I've been, is like we have our entire days, weeks, months just jam packed.
Mm-hmm.
Every single second is spoken for, I think, for two reasons. One, it's terrifying to just be with ourselves, right? Because if you haven't kind of had that awareness when you actually are with yourself and you start hearing your mind, you're like, who the freak is this person, right? So there's that terrifying of like, I don't want to be by myself, so I'm just going to pack everything, you know, my schedule, so I don't have to. And then the flip side of that is when I do not have everything packed, like what you just experienced, I'm bored, but boredom is what breeds, Grayson hates it when I say this, but I'm like, boredom breeds creativity, right?
Mm.
Like so many ideas come from boredom because your brain actually has space to be like Tanya, all the things Tanya was talking about. What do I want to do? What seems fun? What, and allowing yourself to, and also too, it's probably like a little bit of survival, right? Coming out of that survival into the like, what just feels good and fun and creative. Like our brains just don't work in the creative mode when we are in survival. And whether that looks like, not being able to pay your bills, or that looks like sitting in traffic for 30 minutes, or that looks like having a kind of abrupt conversation with our spouse, or, it shows up in the body the same way survival does. And allowing ourselves to have that space and downtime, kind of like you got to get bored to then figure out what feels fun, not have to, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's just
Even like creating the space for it to show up,
Yeah. Yep.
And I think for me, Brenda, I can so relate to like this whole, like, how do you even be fun thing, like question sometimes. I even had someone tell me that I looked like somebody that I worked with. And they were like, oh, no, you're the serious one. She's the fun one. And like, that has like really resonated with me. Like, oh, damn, I'm like always serious about everything, but I'm not. I'm like, I mean, you all know I can be a total smartass and sarcastic and kind of off the cuff, but I was judging my fun, right? Like me having this conversation with you all right now, nestled in my blanket with my tea, is so damn fun.
So fun.
Me taking a nap today with my dogs on my feet, fun. Right? Like, now, this is where my question is like, has our world of social media conditioned us that like fun has to be going to, like the Bahamas or a Fiji? That's hilarious that I just said a Fiji dab trip, because, I would never do that. But I know that you all do.
Someday, maybe.
Yeah.
Next May, unless the world shuts down again, but yes, next May.
But like, has our standards for
It's
fun
funny
just
you
gotten
say
so
that.
damn out of this world that it's like we're not able to just appreciate like this warmth in my hand?
Yeah.
Because it's not post worthy.
Right. I've actually taken like a little bit of a hiatus, not 100% off of social media, but like just challenging myself to not post things, because I was noticing that it was like wanting to post for that. It's almost like an objectification of fun, right? Other people's agreement that that's fun, as if that's more important than my own agreement if it's fun or not.
I've pretty much taken the last year.
Yeah.
And very minimal. I go on there to watch other people, not watch other people, but to see what family and friends are up to.
Yeah.
But I've not posted much in the past year at all, just because I haven't felt like competing. If that's the right statement. And it's like, what I'm doing has nobody needs to know what's going on in here.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Yeah.
And I do find that there are times that, let's say I am quote unquote bored. I don't know that I'm very bored that often, but I find that getting on social media, if I notice that little tinge kind of come into my body of like, oh, I want to do that. It's like my little 2-year-old self going, here's a desire. Like, you want to travel, or you want to redo. I'm in the midst of redoing my bedroom right now. Right. I'm like finding this space of like fun and excitement and exploration, rather than like, I have to get it picture worthy. Because I'm going to tell you, nobody's going to see that bedroom but me and my husband. I mean, maybe if you come into my home, but I'm not going to post pictures of this on Facebook, right? So, or any social media. But like, this has been a fun thing for me to create this. And I got this inspiration from someone else. So it's like noticing that social media doesn't always have to have the negative attachment to it, but there's a fine line between that.
I just had this conversation on the flight back from Portland to Denver. I sat next to a guy and we talked the whole time. Like, there's so many things we could talk, like the time. It was a 2-hour flight and it felt like 20 minutes. So how time,
cool.
is, and also, I mean, we talked about so many things, but one of the things he and I were talking about was play. And he kind of was pushing back on the play, like, well, if all you do is play, then kind of like, oh, I'm just going to be sitting on the couch. And I'm like, yeah, but you're judging what play looks like. Play to you or me might be very different, Play might be for some people creating videos and putting that kind of value out into the world or whatever, right? Play for you, Mike, he was like a drummer in a band. And, but that's fun for you. You're in flow. You are doing what you love. And lots of people get to benefit from it too, And so this idea that play is only for ourselves, and yes, first and foremost, it is for ourselves, but that just because it's for ourselves, no one else gets to benefit from it, or that,
it almost sounds like there's some shame behind it, right? Like that it's like a reward. Like you have to eat your dinner and then you get your brownie.
That was for sure me.
It's like, no, come on now.
Yeah. And when you think about two things, one, like we're all creative geniuses. I feel like it's been parented out of us,
For sure.
We all have that in us, right?
Sure.
When we are born. And, when you're in play, think about the ideas. Like I told him, I was like, when I'm playing, when I ride my bike, the ideas just come out of me. When I, swimming and surfing and all those things, like, it's just like the turns on the faucet and it just goes. And can you imagine a world where we're all playing and our creativity is just off the hook, right?
Tell me a person that's angry when they're playing. I mean, really, right? Like, I have my husband in my ear going, someone playing a sport and not getting their way or not winning, and then they get angry. But I'm like, that's not fun.
They're not playing.
They're not having fun. I have my
Working. They're doing.
Our rival teams played this weekend, and I wear my shirt that says, I just hope both teams have fun. And he's like, oh, Jesus, Christy. I'm like, but that's how I feel. Just like, really, it is no fun to watch people lose and get all in their head. It's like, go out there and have fun. And then everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Good.
Play, energetic, the energy.
Yeah. Anything else before we wrap up?
Today was good.
I feel like I have the tagline when Tanya, I don't know where you got this from, but intimacy, into me, I see.
Mm-hmm.
I had never heard that before. Like, I love seeing, like fear, false evidence appearing real. Like, into me, I see. What a beautiful, wow, that's really powerful.
That was one of my, like, if you could call it a goal, air quotes goal, for myself was more love, more joy, more peace, more creativity, more intimacy. And I always thought, for the longest time, I thought that was about things that were outside of me.
Yes.
The more intimate I've become with myself, the more it has opened up my intimacy with others. And that doesn't even have to, like, it's not about sex, which I used to think that those two were together. But the more I have deepened my own intimacy, the greater that has allowed me to connect with others. So
that's beautiful.
We are the original playground. Like, we have to be willing to play with these things within ourselves.
It reminds me of, like, one of my songs I love is John Mayer's Your Body is a Wonderland. And I know it's very sexual, but it's also like, this body is made to play, is made to have fun, is made for pleasure. Same thing. Like I told the guy on the plane, I'm like, we have 5 senses. I know we have more than that, like your feelers, but like all of our senses are for pleasure. What we get to see, pleasure. What we get to taste, pleasure. Touch, pleasure. And how often are we using our senses for pleasure or, you know,
We using them
Opposites are
against
shutting.
ourselves.
yeah, using them
Mm.
against ourselves.
Today's been really fun.
Oh,
I've
good.
enjoyed it. Thank you all for being here.
Appreciate all of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very,
See you
very good.
next. See you next time.
See y'all
Next
next
one.
time.